Um, all right. Let's see. It's okay. Welcome everyone. Now, please mute your sound. And there we go. And if you'll mute your sound, everyone, we will now have a joy song from Bill. Thank you, Bill.
Hey, thank you. And I just want to introduce this as the Beatles Sunday. So the two songs are Beatles. Well, with a song like Imagine, you have to do that. Hey,
Bill,
we're
you
not going
that
to start. We're going to start
Bill,
with the
I'm
Blackbird.
going to
So,
interrupt you for a moment because that's when
okay.
I watched the Olympic opening. That's the song they sang towards the very end of lighting it.
Oh,
And
good.
it
Well
was
done.
Imagine. And I thought, my gosh, the talk is Imagine. The ceremony is going on. The Olympics are going on. And is Bill going to sing Imagine? Yay, Bill. I love you. Good.
But
Okay.
I'm not going to start with that. I want to start with Blackbird. So
Okay.
here we
We
go.
look forward to it. It won't be
Okay. You can be waiting
Beatles.
breathlessly.
Oh, I'm all muted. Where am I? No. Here we go. Mute.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly all your life. You were only waiting for this moment to arrive. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken eyes and learn to see all your life. You were only waiting for this moment to be free. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly, into the light of the dark bright night. The blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly all your life. You were only waiting for this moment to arise. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly, into the light of the dark black night.
Here we go. Thank you, Phil. You are terrific. Um, okay, so let's go ahead with the opening prayer. And here we are with the Christ candle. And I want you to acknowledge that light that is found in our hearts, the presence and the power of God. The Christ energy that's living within each of us. We are it, and it is us, and we give thanks. And so it is. Thank you. And now, Bill would like to go ahead and sing Surely the Presence and then the Lord's Prayer. Thank you, Bill.
Okay. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel his mighty power and his grace. I can hear the brush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. Surely the presence of the light is in this place. I can feel her mighty power and her grace. I can hear The brush of angels' wings, I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the light is in this place. And the Lord's Prayer coming up here. Our Father and Mother, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from error. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Thank you, Bill. Beautiful. Always so beautiful. And so now let's go ahead and I'm going to read to you the invocation affirmation. And this is who we are. There is only one presence and one power active in my life, God, the good, omnipotent. There is only one presence and one power active in Unity, Clear Lake Center, God, the good, omnipotent. And finally, there is only one presence and one power active in our world, God, the good, omnipotent. And then the 5 basic ideas of unity. This is the basic foundation of unity. God is absolute good, everywhere present. Human beings have a spark of divine with spirit within them, the Christ consciousness within. Therefore, they are inherently good. Human beings create their experience by the activity of their thinking. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. And prayer is the process that affirms our connection with God mind and brings forth wisdom, healing, and everything good. And finally, knowing and understanding universal laws, also called truth, are not enough. A person must also live the truth that he or she knows. And now, Bill is going to sing another song. Thank you, Bill.
As promised, we'll do the other Beatles song. And it sounds like this one is kind of against religion, but I think all it is a warning not to use religion as an excuse to kill people. So that's the way I prefer to look at it. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine country. It isn't hard to do, nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. Imagine no possession. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger, a brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one.
As Bill and I discussed briefly, I was so happy with singing that with the Olympics, saying that's their theme song, and they played it just before the ending. And thank you, Bill. That was fabulous as usual. So continuing, the daily word. Oh yes, here we are. Okay, the daily word for today is on being alive. On Sunday, July 28th, 2024. Divine life flows through me. Sometimes, when life seems filled with obligations and routine, I may feel as though I am merely existing, moving from one task to the next without sparkle or energy. Today, I remind myself I am alive, vitally, radiantly, joyfully alive. My life is what I choose to make it through my positive attitude and understanding myself as a spiritual being. I realize there is so much more to life than the things I must attend to. I will continue to maintain my daily life and respond to the things that need my attention. But now I will meet life with the energy and verve of divine life, which is flowing through me and animating me no matter what I am doing. I affirm I am a divine being, wondrously and magnificently alive. Amen. And from Luke 20:38, now he is God and not of the dead, but of the living, for to him all of them are alive. The message, divine life flows through me. And now, our guest speaker. Okay. Our guest speaker is Reverend Margorie Brach. She is a Unity minister, now living in Sacramento. She has been a guest speaker at churches and centers throughout Northern California. And it is such an honor to have you, Margie, speak to us today. We are so happy to welcome you for your first time speaking to us. And I feel like everything is just falling towards this wonderful talk that you're going to be giving here on Imagine, right? And so I'm going to give the service over to you, Reverend Marjorie Brach.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you so much, Bill, for the beautiful music today. Some of my favorite songs. Oh, feeds my soul. Well, there's such good reminders, that we hear in our daily word and in those 5 basic unity principles. And one of those that I was pondering not long ago, and the law of mind action, that the thoughts we think, shaped our experience of life. And my younger sister dropped by, and she was so excited with something she had seen on Facebook, and she had to tell me about it. And what she saw was someone had written there, imagine yourself in a room with no windows and no doors. How do you get out? And the answer she gave is, stop imagining that. Okay. She has never identified herself as being a Unity student, but it sounded like a pretty good reminder about our law of mind action. And, for all of us who've been in Unity for a little while, we know these words, the law of mind action, thoughts held in mind, produce after their kind. And it was just so much a part of my early, Unity Church experience that I was surprised by something I learned when I was in ministerial school at Unity. I was surprised by a lot of the things I learned, new insights, new perspectives, but one of them is that this little book that had been so much a part of my Unity studies, that has been a part of Unity studies of ministers and licensed teachers and, Unity students for generations. It's a little book called Revealing Word. It's about that big. In that book, it has all these words and phrases with definitions of what they mean in the context of Unity's approach to metaphysical understanding, looking at the spiritual meaning of life and situations. And in that book that has all this history of different Unity phrases, the words law of mind action are not in there. But interestingly, that same concept is presented in that book under another name, a more contemporary name for the same idea, or what I used to think was a contemporary name, law of attraction. And there it defines this law as all conditions and circumstances in our body and affairs are attracted to us in accord with the thoughts that we hold steadily in consciousness. Now, of course, there are disagreements among Unity scholars about whether those experiences are attracted to us or we're attracted to them. But the result is pretty much the same, that the thoughts we think do affect the experiences that we have in our bodies and in our lives. I really appreciate the fact that our Unity teachings are so grounded in Scripture. And this particular Unity teaching is grounded firmly in our Christian Gospels. In fact, specifically, the story that I found is from the Gospel of John. And it's this idea that the thoughts that we hold in mind affect our lives, but also that teaching that we find in Unity, that imagination is an important and powerful way that we can focus our thoughts. For anyone who's familiar with those 12 powers that our co-founder Charles Fillmore wrote about so eloquently so long ago, that idea of imagination, he attributed a part of our body and an apostle to each of the 12 powers. And with imagination, he attributed it to the center of our forehead and connected it with the apostle Nathaniel, or also known as Bartholomew. Well, when we look at the Gospel of John, in fact, in chapter 1, verse 47 and 48, what we find is Jesus having the experience he was having after he was baptized by and recognized as a great spiritual leader by his cousin, John the Baptist. And it was a period of time where people were listening to what he was saying, to his reinterpretation of the teachings he had grown up with. And they were looking at how he was living his life, the choices he was making, and they wanted to know more. And they followed him so they could learn more. And it was in the course of that experience that we find these words. When Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him, he said of him, "Here is truly an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." And Nathanael asked him, "Where did you get to know me?" And Jesus said, "I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you." Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with what a full-grown fig tree that's full of fruit looks like. But the branches are heavy already. And when they are full of figs in the fullness of summer, those branches can reach all the way down to the ground, all around the trunk of that tree. And so the idea that Nathanael was down under this fig tree, and Jesus saw him when the branches were blocking view. When we look at that metaphysically, we can see that Christ spirit within, that divinity within that Barbara mentioned in our readings, was able to perceive a thing before it was presented to his physical eyes. And I can't imagine that there are any among us who haven't had that experience. Maybe not with a fig tree and a disciple, but nonetheless had that experience where we're going along in life and we start thinking about something and all of a sudden it shows up. Maybe we're thinking of a friend and all of a sudden they're giving us a call on the phone, or maybe we're thinking, I really need some more fruit this week. And all of a sudden someone's giving us fruit. We never know what it's going to be. But it happens, when we hold a thought in our mind, those things show up in our lives. And this is not just a unity teaching. This is not just something out of Christian scripture. This is something that crosses over, and we find it also in other faith traditions. I have to tell you, I really love my yoga teacher. His name happens to be Reverend Bob Brach. And he teaches in his yoga classes about that spiritual faith tradition. He talks about the chakras and the different parts of our body. And the sixth chakra is called Ajna, and it's right in the center of our forehead. It's the idea that our physical eyes, our two eyes see, the material world, but that we have this power to imagine things before they show up in our life, to picture things and then experience them. Whatever our beliefs are, whatever teachings we grew up with, this is a reality in our lives. And I've got to admit that sometimes it's a really hard teaching, because for those of us who were taught that we need to figure things out for ourselves and we need to be strong and we need to know how to do things, if something goes wrong in our lives, if something really difficult happens, those of us who know this teaching, well, I know I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one who's ever thought, oh my gosh, what was I thinking that brought this on? There's a phrase for that. It's not in the revealing word, but there's a phrase for that in unity, and it's called metaphysical malpractice. And we're discouraged from doing that to ourselves. How we respond to situations that we experience in life is just as important as the thoughts we may think leading up to something that shows up. And yet, when we can remember as we're going through life to notice what we're thinking, it can make a big difference. I remember this one teacher, I went to a workshop decades ago in Unity, and this teacher said, you know, if you're not sure about those thoughts that you're shooting through your mind all day, because that's what our brains do, then set a timer periodically throughout the day. And when the timer goes off, ask yourself, what was I thinking? Is this thing that I'm thinking, is that what I want to bring forth and experience more of in my life? Or do I want to come back up the path and go down a path of more positive thinking about what I really do want to see happening? There's a lot of practical tools, but we are our own thought police as we go along. So when we can check ourselves and redirect those thoughts, it can really make a big difference. I appreciated a story that I heard recently about a woman she was born in the early 1940s, and she was born in Brooklyn, New York. And she grew up in the Flatbush neighborhood of Brooklyn. And what she called it was the projects. And she lost her dad when she was really young. He died when she was just very young. And her mom was grieving, and her mom just never really was a great nurturer. And her mom, finding her way through life, remarried, and she married a man named Lou Kind. And Lou Kind was not kind, at least not to this little girl. And she was having a hard time. She was having a hard time at home. And at school, she didn't dress like the other kids. She didn't look like the other kids. And it was hard to get along with people. She was a good student, though, and she worked really hard. She was just hungry to learn. She always wanted to learn more. And this one day, after an experience of being bullied at home again, she went and she laid down on her bed by herself. And in that moment, she had a mystical experience. And in that moment, she absolutely knew in her heart and soul that she would have to find her own way in life. She didn't know how she was going to do that at that point, but she just took that with her. And, as young kids do who live in a city like that, she sometimes had health problems. And when she'd tell her mom about them, her mom would blame her for having the health problem. And so this little girl, she was dealing with this pressured feeling in her chest. And she didn't know quite what to do, but she heard that there was a doctor who had an office in one of the buildings in the projects where she lived. And she kept going by and looking, and she absolutely knew that if she asked for help there, she would get better. And it took her a week to try to build up her courage. And finally, one day, she ran up and she pushed the bell, and the doctor wasn't there. But what happened was in the mere fact of pushing that bell and asking for help. The pressure on her chest went away. Well, one of the things that her stepfather did that did really help her in her life was he bought a television for their family. And this little girl saw actors and actresses and performers of all kinds and singers. And when she saw them doing that work on the television, she absolutely knew that was what she was going to do with her life. Now, nothing in the outer made it appear that that was going to be possible for her. But she was still working hard, getting those good grades. And she started finding out about ways to, to be a part of the arts programs in her school. She got a job at age 14 as a cashier in a restaurant. And she got enough money, she could start taking herself to the movies, and she could start buying books, and they sold LP records in the grocery store, and she could afford those. And and so she started just studying music and books and films, and she tried out in high school, for the theater parts, but she didn't look like the other kids. They didn't think she was pretty. So she didn't get those parts. But she started buying these the scripts of plays, and she would take them home and she'd act out the whole play by herself at home. And she started developing opinions about what would make a performance better. It wasn't long before she and a friend at age 14 took themselves into Manhattan to see their first Broadway show. And from then on, she was there every week, whether anyone was going with her or not, taking in all she could about the entertainment trade. She started buying the trade bulletins and reading through those. And at age 15, still in high school, she learned about something called summer stock. And it cost $150 for her to go there and do grunt work, but maybe get a walk-on part now and then. And she said to her mom, she says, I want to go. And her mom said, no. And she says, but Mom, didn't you remember that Grandpa left me $500 when he passed? And that little girl went off to summer stock, and she started getting walk-on parts. And, and when she started meeting people in show business, and when she got back home, she just kept on reaching out. She wanted to learn. She wanted teachers. She wanted people she could collaborate with. And she continued to seek them out, and she found them. And if she did not understand something, she'd keep asking questions until she did. And in the course of this, where, she wasn't having a lot of outer success, but she was focusing her whole energy on it, she came across something in a book about playwriting. And the idea she came across was that thought transcends matter. Thought transcends matter. And she was a smart kid. She knew what that meant. She knew that meant if she thought about something and imagined it, she could experience it in her life. Well, these good people that she had found who were helping her to teach by teaching her and guiding her, they supported her in signing up for a talent contest. And she practically had to sing to those people that were her friends. She had to turn around and look the other way because she was so scared. But when she got to the talent show and afraid and didn't want to do it, she sang, and she won $50 and a free dinner. And she kept winning this talent show every week. And then she got hired to sing there two days a week. And then other people came to hear her sing, and she got invited to audition at another club. And there, she got hired to sing regularly too. And making money like that, she was actually able to move out of the projects and into Manhattan. And from then on, her persistence and her knowing that no matter how many times she was turned away, thought transcends matter, continued to bring her results. She got cast in a Broadway show, and her part brought down the house. The little part she had. And it wasn't long before she was cast in a lead role in that Broadway show. And more opportunities opened up, and more and more. And with every setback, and there were plenty in that industry, she remembered thought transcends matter. And today, she's one of the best known performers of our time. Barbra Streisand, a renowned singer, songwriter, director, actor, producer. In her most recent book, she quotes Goethe as saying this: "At the moment of commitment, the universe conspires to assist you." Thought transcends matter. Those thoughts we hold in mind, they do produce after their kind. Imagine that. And we're not all going to be big stars. We're not, you know, we've got lives that we live every day. But I had an experience not long ago that reminded me that these same principles, they're always at work. I was happy this year, Bob and I, we got to celebrate 22 years of marriage. And I still have the fondest memories of our wedding day. And it was just an experience full of love and connection, you know, with all these people we loved who celebrated with us. And the rings that Bob gave me, my wedding and engagement ring, are just this enduring reminder of that love. And I've been able to do something in the last 9 years that I've wanted to do since I was a kid. And that was to study art. Now, I've been going back to the community colleges and just taking one art class every semester. And in the most recent years, I've mostly been doing work in the ceramic arts department. And one of the things I learned, one day I was crouching over the potter's wheel, you know, trying to make a little vessel on the wheel. And someone leaned over to me and they said, "If you don't take your rings off, they're going to wear down to nothing." And I did. The idea of taking it off my hand, it was not comfortable. But I figured out a little system. I could use a little cloth pouch and I could put a string through it and, you know, put the string around my neck and put my rings in that pouch so that when I was done and my hands were cleaned again, then I could just put my rings back on and carry on. Well, I was in a class last semester that it was in a smaller classroom than usual, and the sink was at the far end of the room from where I was. And this one day, I was using this particularly sticky clay. I mean, it was sticking to everything. My hands, it was just sticky. Well, I was getting into the project, and we had a model in the room, you know, and I was, you know, supposed to be sculpting this model. And there was all these people between me and the sink, and I realized I still had my rings on. I thought, oh, if I reached into my backpack with my hands like that, I would have clay all over everything. So I just took off the rings and I buried them deep down in the jeans pocket that I was wearing. And, you know, and I got busy with my project, and I always get excited when I'm doing art. So I was just thoroughly enjoying that. And then, you know, left school that day, stopped in the restroom, went on home. And it was only much later that I was at home and I realized I didn't have my rings on. And so I went back to the jeans, those They had clay on them too, so they were in the laundry basket, pulled them out, reached into the pocket, and the rings were not there. And in that moment, I remember that after going to the restroom at the school that day, I had heard the sound of a small metallic object hitting the floor on this, in this bathroom tiles. And my heart dropped to the floor because I was sure that I'd left my rings there. Well, I got back over to the school as quick as I could. And I searched the bathroom, and I talked to my teacher, and I talked to 4 custodians, and I checked in at the art department, letting them know. And I posted something in the bathroom saying, please contact me if you found this. And I went to the lost and found, and they sent me to campus police, and, on it went from there. And no one had found it. And as the days went by, even though I was praying, even though Bob was praying, even though another friend of ours was praying with us over this situation, my heart just got heavier and heavier. I tried to handle it spiritually. I tried to think, some student needed money for food, and they saw this as a gift from God. I told myself, some underpaid janitor needed this to pay rent and take care of their family, and my thoughts became more and more negative towards that school and the people there. Finally, one day I was talking to a friend on the phone who suggested to me, you might want to consider that you actually will find these rings. And when I got off the phone, I thought, oh yeah, law of mind action. Oh yeah. and I felt a sensation on my hand. When you have a hat on and you take the hat off and it still feels like you have a hat on? Well, I had that sensation on my left hand. Like the rings were there. So I didn't look at my hand. I just let my hand lay by my side and felt the sensation of the rings being there. And I remembered about imagination, and I closed my eyes. And I imagined seeing the rings on my hand. I imagined holding them in the palm of my right hand because they'd been restored to me. And almost immediately, when I opened my eyes, I had a thought. And the thought was to go to the bedroom closet and put my hand in a particular spot under the cedar chest that is next to the laundry basket. And I put my hand on that exact spot, and my rings were there. As long as I believed they were not going to come back to me, I couldn't find them. But when I used my thoughts and the power of imagination, they were right there. One of the great teachings that I love in Unity is law of mind action. But another one that I love is the idea of grace. Because I don't know if there's any of us who don't have a negative thought now and then. It's part of our human adventure. But we always can come back up the path and go back on the right path of positive thinking. And when we can do that, we can be gentle with ourselves. We open the door for wonderful things to happen. I'm so grateful to be remembering this with all of you today, and just glad, so glad for this community and being part of your community as we share. Bless you, friends.
We'd be clapping. We all should be clapping. Oh, Marge, thank you. So many. I think sometimes speakers forget that those kind of personal stories, and you sold a few of them, are the things that we remember that then triggers the message, and it was beautiful. You're beautiful. Thank you so much. Really. So thank you. So, all right. Well, this is my time to give some announcements. And future talks. Well, you're going to be getting your newsletter. What is it? August 1st, right? And in the August 1st newsletter coming out on whatever Wednesday, Thursday, whatever that is, you'll get it. Just remember that at church, Patricia Haller is there on the first and third Sunday. Yes, she will be there. And our Zoom speakers, our guest speakers, are on August 11th. We'll have Christy Karate. Sparkle your life using universal principles. I think you're going to want to read about that one. It looks really interesting. And at the end of the month, on August 25th, Reverend Margaret Flick, will be visiting us. And wow, she's so terrific. And her talk, Coming to Our Senses. So you'll be reading about those in the newsletter that's coming out in a few days. So as we go on, you know that how much we appreciate your donations. Greatly appreciated. And just mail to Unity P.O. Box 755, Lower Lake 95457. So Unity P.O. Box 755, Lower Lake 95457. And so, continuing, Bill will close the service. We're still muted, but we can sing with him. And he's going to close the service singing the peace song. And then stay for chatting. We want to chat with Marge. Okay, and Bill and everybody.
Ooh, wires here. There we go. Okay. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as creator, family all are we. Let me walk with my family, perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous thought. To take each moment and live